Coming up on Point Spread Weekly, powered by the Vegas Stats and Information Network. We want to make you a better handicapper, and we've got plenty of sports wagering information. Join VSiN's betting experts and odds makers as they discuss sides, totals, money lines, props, and parlays, so you take sharper action. Cashing tickets is what it's all about. It's Point Spread Weekly, powered by VSiN, and it starts right now.
All right, welcome into another edition of Point Spread Weekly every single week. It's a great way to end the week. And what a week it is and going to be, because guess what? Sports, essentially, they're back. NHL starts on Saturday, NBA season already underway. And what better way to celebrate than, of course, with another edition of Point Spread Weekly. Check it out, VSiN.com/subscribe. And a special edition of the show, Point Spread Weekly, because we have a guest on set. Matt Youmans is with us today. What's up, man?
Point Spread Weekly, the magazine, is 3 years old now.
Yeah.
And last week, what's this show, about 1 year old?
Point Spread Weekly?
How long has this show been going?
I've only been doing it for like 7 weeks.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's less than a year old. Okay. Let's put it that way. A friend of mine on the East Coast was watching it, and he said, JVT does an awesome job with this show, Point Spread Weekly. I said, okay, I'm going to go in studio this week and see if I can ruin it.
Okay, I like it. You know, I actually got a text from one Doug Kazarian about this show, too. Mm-hmm. Told me that it was like, hey, man, this UFC guy you're talking to is pretty sharp. And then he responded with, oh, it's Lou. I know who it is. So I didn't even need to respond to Doug Kazarian. So it was a good two-text chat, both from Doug.
Who else is on today's show?
So we got you, of course. We're going to talk about your article, No Bubble, Major League Baseball, Risky Business. That sounds like a very much Matt Youmans type of headline. Joe Bonavith from ExpressBet's going to join us as well. Will Hill, who's done a great job not only writing up the NBA, but, of course, dabbling out into other sports like Major League Baseball. This week, of course, is the NBA. And you know I'm more than happy to talk about the National Basketball Association. And then Lou Finocchiaro is going to join us. He's been a weekly staple here that the mixed martial arts UFC promotion has really taken center stage over the last few months. And he has been, as Paul put it this morning, on a heater in MMA and in UFC. So Lou's going to join us at the bottom of the
That's accurate. I mean, when you step into the spotlight like Lou has been for the past, 3-4 months?
Right.
UFC basically had the stage this summer. And Lou, you don't want to bomb when you get your big shot. And Lou's actually done pretty well with his UFC picks this summer, and his analysis is in the magazine every week.
I hear that Dana White has taken notice.
I didn't hear that. I heard that Dana White ripped the media last week.
Oh, he's always doing it. By the way, to the media's face. It was one of the best interviews I've ever seen.
Brett Okamoto, right?
Brett Okamoto to his face, telling him that the media knows nothing. And Brett's like, okay, well, I'm kind of the media, Dana, but okay.
I got to tell you, I don't think Brett's going to be flattered by that impersonation you just did of him.
I'm going to tell you that I don't think Brett watches.
At one point, he did.
Yeah.
I don't think he's watching
No,
now.
I don't think so.
But at
Maybe
one
he's
point,
bad
he was watching VSiN every week.
He's definitely. Well, before we get to the article that you wrote, just general thoughts, because obviously you know that you live and breathe sports, and golf has been around. You talked about mixed martial arts, but the NBA's back. NHL is going to be back in full swing. How are you feeling? Because I'm excited as all hell.
Oh, it's great to finally have these jam-packed sports weekends. You're talking about golf, UFC, which we've had for the past couple months. Through the baseball season. Yep. Now you got the NBA, which you're crazy about, and the hockey playoffs. So you got 5 big-time events going on at the same time, and that's what makes this such a great weekend. Hopefully not too many baseball games get postponed or canceled because of virus outbreaks, but still, I think it's going to be a struggle, and there are going to be hurdles throughout this baseball season. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but still now we've at least got the NBA and the NHL to lean on, as well as golf and the UFC. And, obviously we've written about these topics in Point Spread Weekly all summer.
Did you bet anything play-in series-wise in the NHL? You involved at all?
No.
No?
Nothing in I got no bets in hockey. I did make a couple bets in the NBA on the first night, which turned out well. Maybe I should quit now.
Right.
Up 2 games in the NBA. But I see a lot of opportunities here in NBA betting. I think in the bubble in Orlando is going to be interesting. As handicappers, this is something we've never experienced before. Right. It's a new frontier. And I think that's what makes it so intriguing, is that a lot of people are going to come up with different angles. Some of those angles make a lot of sense and play out. Other angles like that are not going to pay off. But that's why it's so fascinating for handicappers to tackle what we're about to tackle with the NBA and the NHL and all these sporting events without fans. I had somebody ask me yesterday, what do you think the home field is going to be worth in the NFL? So
Yep.
we'll talk about that, obviously, over the next month, but it's not going to mean what it used to mean, obviously.
If anything whatsoever. This is Point Spread Weekly, by the way, here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Matt Youmans is actually in studio today as we go over the best of what is offered in the weekly missive, Point Spread Weekly here at VSiN. Remember, sign up, VSiN.com/subscribe. All right, no bubble. Major League Baseball doing risky business. It seems like every single day, Major League Baseball has another team that either has a positive test or another Marlin test positive. As of Friday, we had an 18th Marlins player test positive. That was breaking news early Friday morning. The Cardinals now involved. Their game with the Brewers, of course, postponed. So you wrote about this for Points Per Weekly. What are your general thoughts here as we're watching this? I don't want to say it's falling apart, but it's definitely getting worse and worse as the days go on for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and you had to anticipate there were going to be some positive tests. There are going to be outbreaks within some teams. We talked about what's going to happen. How's baseball going to handle this when it does happen? And obviously, it has not been handled very well with the Marlins.
Yep.
We'll see what happens, if outbreaks happen with other teams. But you have to have contingency plans in place in case you have breakouts with teams. They apparently didn't have one with the Marlins. If you have expanded rosters and 60 players, shouldn't you be prepared? I don't care if they're AA, AAA level players. Right. You got to field a team, all right? If you're going to Major League Baseball, if you plan on having a season, you better have these teams prepared to field a team, and that wasn't the case with the Marlins. So now you have to play 2 7-inning doubleheaders. They're going to start in August, which I don't have a problem with.
Yeah.
Do what you can to get in as many games as possible. I don't think every team's going to get in 60 games.
Right.
But, for betting purposes, if you bet baseball win totals, most books have up at least 58 games must be played for action or 60 games must be played for action. I think you're going to see teams get in between 55 and 60 games. And it's almost a mission impossible type of deal, what baseball is trying to pull off, JVT, because with what's going on in society right now, if you don't have players, teams, the staffs, everybody in a bubble, and you're traveling, halfway across the country. I know you're trying to limit travel, but you're still traveling a lot. You're going to have issues. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think this is kind of a case study for the NFL to watch and monitor and say, what can we do better than MLB?
Yep, I would completely agree. And it's funny because we'll get off the actual virus. We'll talk about betting implications and everything. But what I found was interesting was, to a certain extent at one point, the NBA and sometimes the NHL were getting criticized in the build-up to the bubble because they're dragging their feet. What are they doing? Are they going to have a plan? Are they coming back? Well, up to this point, they're doing a really good job. And for 2 consecutive testing cycles, they have no positive tests. And the bubble seems to be working for them. So taking your time and doing this whole bubble thing seems to have worked for Major League Baseball. And the last time we saw in terms of cycles of tests in the NHL, there are no positive tests either. So the bubble has worked for both of these leagues. There was the thought they were going to do the bubble in Major League Baseball, but what I found interesting was they were like, it's too long. We can't play Major League Baseball. We can't play a whole season that long. Well, we ended up with only 60 games. Mm-hmm. I feel like you could have ended up with a bubble regardless, right?
Yeah, you could have had the bubble in Florida or Arizona.
Right.
It's tough to say that because those are hot spots for the virus, but that's where you have spring training sites set up, and you think you just could have kept teams in those sort of
bubbles. So the NBA's at right now.
Televise the games with no fans, and maybe that would have worked. I think that would have worked. But you have more players to deal with. I think the NBA is, fortunate because you have fewer players to deal
Rosters
with.
are smaller.
It's a lot easier to do it with basketball. I think it's a little easier also to do it with hockey. But those 2 leagues set up, I think, intelligent, sustainable plans. And that's why as bettors, I think we feel much more confident about betting futures in basketball and hockey because we don't think you're going to be refunded. I really reduced the amount I bet on baseball futures because I didn't have a lot of confidence this season was going to get finished and that those futures bets were going to end up as refunds.
Didn't bet a single one. I had like four or 5 that I wanted to play, and I ended up like, nah, I can't do it. With the travel, it's just too unknown, and sure enough, one of them would have been a dead loser, 7-1 on the Angels to win the AL West. How bad is that team?
Depressing. Year after year, the Angels, you think this might be the year they put it together. Right. They can avoid the pitching injuries. They finally have a really competent manager in Joe Madden, who has not been that competent in the first week. And Mike Trout now is on the paternity list, and he's out. He was off to a poor start, and there was a lot of sharp money, by the way, on Trout unders.
Yep.
In all his personal statistical categories. He's off to a poor start now. He's gone. there are a few teams you can basically write off at this point. And, unfortunately, your Angels are one of those teams.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, let's talk about some betting here then in Major League Baseball outside of some of the futures. Part of what you wrote about early on in Major League Baseball, favorites were cashing in at a very high clip, weren't they?
You know, right now, road favorites are 20-4.
Get out of here, really?
Road favorites in Major League Baseball are 20-4. The road teams going into today are 51-41. So when I was on with you a couple weeks ago, I said I feel like home field advantage in baseball is going to mean little to nothing.
Right.
So it's meant nothing or a little to the road team.
Right.
Because sometimes we saw in German soccer, where the home teams couldn't win. Some teams are just flat when you're playing in your home park and you don't have fans, and you show up and you're emotionally flat. And that's probably not the sole explanation for what we're seeing, JVT, but it's obvious, and I think this could carry over to the NFL. So you got to watch. You got to watch how this plays out. That the home field advantage is nothing. Should mean nothing to the line. And we've seen baseball favorites priced. The Dodgers at one book last week got as high as minus 480, I think, on Saturday against the Giants. Minus 480.
Yep.
Minus 380 at some books in Vegas. If they were on the road in that same game, they probably would have been priced minus 280 or 300. Mm-hmm. So it was still being built into the line. I think the odds makers are adjusting at this point and saying that, okay, it's obvious now that the home field advantage means little or nothing.
Have you been talking to the guys? I know you talk to the guys around town in terms of behind the counter. Has the betting public at all? Like, how have they changed their habits at all when it comes to betting, or is it still favorites, parlays, things like that?
I think it's still favorites and overs and parlays, and it's basically the same trends. I've talked to a couple bookmakers who said basically we're rooting against the Yankees and the Dodgers every day, and they're betting all these games to go over, which might not be the worst plan in the world because typically when you start a baseball season, it's in March or April, late March or April. It's colder. The ball's not flying. Pitchers are ahead of the hitters. No. You're going to see more unders. This is different because you're starting this baseball season in late July when it's hot, the ball flies, and we're seeing some big scores.
Yep.
So I believe overs are a little bit ahead of unders at this point, but I have to double check that stat. Anyway, it's not like it typically is early in a baseball season where the sharp money comes under because the ball flies late in the summer. We're seeing higher scores. Last night, we saw the Padres and Giants. Padres blew a 6-1 lead for the second night in a row.
Yep.
They go to the 10th inning. They score 6 runs in the 10th, and the game ends up 12-7. The total was 8. It was 6-1 in the 7th inning, and you end up with 19 runs scored. So we've seen a lot of runs, I think, early in the season, which is not that surprising because you expect high-scoring games at this point in the summer.
I would also think, too, just watching some of the game, you mentioned the Padres game. You mentioned I've been closely following the Angels.
Bullpens have been bad, by the way.
These bullpens have been bad
atrocious. For Padres and the Angels and several other teams.
Right, that's what stuck out. And it's funny because it seems like the last few years, bullpens have had a magnifying glass on them. They seem to be getting worse. But this season, it seems really stark how bad. You even just go back to opening night where it's a 1-0 game the entire way, Dodgers and Giants. Yeah. And then it just opens up in the last 3 frames, and you're seeing this time and time again. I don't know if it's maybe because of the change in terms of everything that's happened with these pitchers or what, or maybe it's a new rule that some of these guys got to go through 3 guys right before they can get out of there or the end of the inning. Regardless, it's been awful to watch some of these guys.
Yeah, I don't know what the explanation is for why bullpens have been so bad, but we've seen a lot of bullpen implosions early. I thought we were going to see them more as we got deeper into August because bullpens were going to get worn down and overworked, right? Because starters were not going to be going deep into games, and as bullpens got overworked, we would see some blow-ups. Starters are not going deep into games now, but the bullpen should not be overworked at this point. It's 2 weeks into the season. We're just seeing some very bad bullpen work outside of the top teams. The Yankees obviously have a great bullpen. Dodgers have a pretty good bullpen. Yep. But that goes without saying that the elite teams going to have good bullpens. Just a lot of interesting things to handicap early in the season, and let's just hope the season continues. And I thought it was a complete overreaction by a lot of people in the media who wanted the baseball season shut down or said it was in jeopardy when the Marlins outbreak happened. That was one team. That was all happening within one clubhouse. Now, if that starts to spread to 5 teams or more, then you've got a serious problem.
So we're at 3 right now, I think.
Now it's a 3. You've still got a manageable problem, but if it spreads out to more teams, then you're gonna have to seriously talk about what do we do next.
I liked, by the way, my favorite line in this week's Point Spread Weekly, Dr. Anthony Fauci's feeble ceremonial first pitch in D.C. made him a candidate to join the White Sox staff.
Dude.
That was bad.
That guy was supposedly an athlete in college.
Was he really?
Back in like the 50s.
Well, that was the 50s, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, athletes back then, it's a little different.
It is a lot different. But still, shouldn't you know how to throw a baseball? That was one of the worst. That was right there with 50 Cent.
Oh, yeah. That was really bad. Or if you remember Carly Rae Jepsen, look up that one. She threw out a first pitch at a Rays game.
I did not see
Oh, man. It's brutal. I think it just hit the mound. Like, it went straight down. It was nuts.
No, but speaking of the White Sox,
Right.
that's one team you're going to look at. I think when they're, especially at home, it's more of a hitter's park. You might look at overs more with the White Sox at home because their pitching staff is struggling, to say the least, and they got pretty good offense. So that's a team where, and we saw it in the series against the Twins, high-scoring games. Those are the type of things you're looking for right now.
I would say, too, last thing on baseball, and I'll get your thoughts on a couple NBA things, but I think the White Sox feel like a lesson that we, as I say the collective we, that bettors should learn. Like, the betting market seems to be a year ahead on teams a lot of the time, right? Like, a lot of people like the White Sox, you know what I mean?
And the Reds.
Yeah, not the Red Sox. But the White Sox to, win that division. And Bet Rivers, right, it's regional, but like Bet Rivers for a while, we've had one of the guys on. We talked about them leading the tick account in terms of to win that division, to win the AL. Like, there was a lot of hype behind this White Sox team, betting them over their win total. And it seems like the betting market's usually ahead on a lot of these teams. And it's the NFL too, right? Like the Cleveland Browns. Last year, a lot of people thought the Cleveland Browns were going to be like that team, and they ended up not being it. We'll see what they do this year. But they're that team, that young team that seems to be on the verge of taking the next step. They always say wait a year. When everybody's on them 1 year, it's usually the next year where they finally take that step.
Which is why you have to look at the Browns this year and say maybe this is the year to bet the Browns. Last year was the year to bet against the Browns and fade them. And this year maybe the Browns actually get their act together with a better coach, and Baker Mayfield was humbled a little bit last year after he talked a lot of trash and got it handed to him. By the way, you talked about the Reds and the White Sox. I don't think that was all public because early on there were a lot of sharps touting the White Sox and the Reds.
Yeah.
And then the public kind of jumped on that too. And I think the sharps might have jumped off the bandwagon. Most of them did at that point, or said, I'll look somewhere else when the public became really hot on those two teams. But you're right. You don't want to be on the trendy teams, let's put it that way. And Anthony Fauci went to Regis High School in Manhattan, and he was captain of the school's basketball team at 5'7". That was in the late 1950s. Obviously, he was
probably power forward back then.
He was obviously not captain of the baseball team.
No.
How can you be a basketball player and throw a baseball like that?
Right. You got to have some, like, you would at least be able to see it. Like, even if it didn't get to the plate, you'd be able to see some of the old athleticism, like, shine forward. But I guess not. When you become a doctor like that, I guess you don't really use your athleticism that much.
Probably not.
All right. Really quickly, last couple minutes here with Youmans. You can follow him, of course, on Twitter. You probably already do it. Matt Youmans 24/7. Listen to him, watch him, follow the money. Morning, 7 a.m. Eastern here on VSiN. NBA. So we saw Thursday night, right? It's actually, speaking of trendy things, right? Mm-hmm. It seemed to be the trend to bet these games over, and they came way under. Does that make you lead? Did that lead you to think that some of these games, because we're recording this on Friday, these games are still getting bet over the total? Does this make you think that, like, some of these games they're going to close pretty high, and you're going to come in right before the game closes and start betting these under? Some of them, not all of them, obviously.
Well, I think I mentioned to you last week, I know a couple of sharp bettors who played every game on the board the first couple of days under the total.
Yeah.
And obviously you got better numbers, I think, than they're out there in most cases. But we're seeing some of the numbers go back up.
Yeah.
I played, like I said, like you did, the Clippers-Lakers under 220. I did not bet the other game under last night. Was kind of kicking myself for that. I did play the Sixers-Pacers game over 212.
Yep.
I got a theory for that. We'll see if it blows up or not. But the Pacers are going with small ball. Mm-hmm. And their weakness, they don't defend the rim. Kind of like with Sabonis out. They're a better offensive team with Sabonis on the floor. But they're going to be a different offensive team now that they're playing small ball. I really don't think they have much rim defense. And the Sixers are going to play tall ball, essentially, mm-hmm. right, and try to attack the Pacers' weakness and attack the rim. And I think the Sixers are going to be better offensively after moving Ben Simmons off the point. I think we're going to see a better Philly offense in this game. It's just a theory. And I've talked to a couple people about the Sixers and what they think. And this total is low enough, JVT, that I feel like I can play it over at 212. Sixers Pacers over 212. The South Point had 210, but I don't think that number's up now. It looks like in the market it's mostly 212 or a little bit higher. But that's one game I was looking over. Otherwise, I don't know. It's kind of a wait-and-see sort of thing because some of these games, I think you're going to see crazy high scores. In the Rockets game, you might see the Rockets attempt 45 to 53 pointers, and it'll be like an all-star game. Who knows? But that's difficult for me to predict. I still say I'm going to stick with what I said before, that in the NBA is the best league for in-game wagering because of volatile swings and, the runs, the wild runs you go on. And you saw it last night in both games. There are great betting opportunities in-game. And if you don't have a strong opinion before the game, just wait and bet it in-game. Look for the right spot. It's always tricky to decide when the right spot is.
In the first quarter of Jazz Pelicans, the in-game total, I was keeping track of it, the highest point, according to William Hill, was 236.5.
Oh, wow.
It's a game that finished with 210 points. Like, to your point, like, you can really get in on some of these and bet, and if you said it.
Pelicans were minus 700 to win the game with 6 minutes to go.
Right. Like, it's nuts, dude, if you keep track of a lot of this. But, all right, Matt Youmans, again, check out the piece, and there's a lot more to the piece as well. We don't want to give it all away. But, again, your headline, Major League Baseball. No bubble, doing risky business. At Matt Youmans 24/7 up on Twitter. Thanks for coming in, man. Appreciate it.
You bet. Good to be here.
All right. We roll on Point Spread Weekly. We have plenty to get to when we come back. Joe Bunivith is going to join us. Will Hill also on the other side of that one. We're going to talk a little bit more about the NBA and forecasting maybe some of the motivation for some of these teams, but also some win totals for these seeding games because some teams really don't have anything to play for because they're locked up into the top. We'll talk about that with William Hill in a few minutes. Tips off this week. Quick Picks has all of your parlay action. Win up to $50,000 per ticket. You bet it. It's fun. Automatic 100% first-time deposit bonus for VSiN customers. Quick Picks, the real money parlay props game based on daily fantasy scoring, is live NBA matchups featuring all of your favorite stars for big payouts. Play Major League Baseball, PGA, NASCAR, UFC action as well. VSiN customers can now play Quick Picks through the special offer. You get 100% automatic deposit bonus up to $100 when you sign up for a new Quick Picks account. Sign up now. No need to type in a promo code. You go to quickpicks.com/VSiN bonus to find out more. That's quickpicks.com/VSiN bonus. But why take my word for it here on Point Spread Weekly? I'm Jonathan Von Tobel, by the way. Let's bring in Joe Bunivith, the COO, Sports Analytics and Data Corp, with us here today. Joe, I appreciate a couple minutes. So, this week, of course, as we noted, it marks the return of several major sports. This month is going to be insane. The next 2 months are. Why don't you tell us what's new at Quick Picks now that things are kind of getting back to normal?
Yes, obviously we got the NBA today. Everybody's excited to have another major sport added to the schedule. Kicks off tonight. We have Quick Picks, LeBron James up on the board. We have Kawhi Leonard up on the board. You can pick their total, and we have a bunch of matchups, soccer as well. We have a full slate of Major League Baseball today, as well as upcoming sports for the weekend. We'll have UFC, NASCAR, and we offer PGA every day that the round ends. We put up a new set of matchups, so you can enter action on those as well. We also offer crossover, so if you like the over on LeBron James and the over on Mike Trout and Kevin Harvick over Kyle Busch and Ricky Fowler over Bryson DeChambeau, we'll allow you to enter a ticket like that. So you can actually enter cross-sport as well.
You piqued my interest there. What is walk me through the UFC? What are you picking there? What's the ticket look like if you're going to get involved with UFC over a Quick Picks?
Yeah, so we'll have our UFC up tomorrow evening, and it's a fantasy scoring format. So we score based on the action the stats of the actual individual matches. So you don't necessarily will see like Brunson versus Shahbazian. Is that how you say his name? But you might see, say, Joan Candlewood versus Brunson because they have a higher significant strike ratio. So we score by knockouts, takedowns, submission attempts, significant strikes, and obviously a different value for a first round, second round, third round win or decision.
How much action have you seen on Major League Baseball in its first week? You got to think it's pretty popular now that people have been starving for this and it's been back.
Yes. We added NASCAR and UFC mostly out of necessity because they were first off the gate, and then brought in PGA, of course. PGA is actually extremely popular in the daily fantasy space in a game like ours, but Major League Baseball this week has been a massive addition, clearly bringing up the floor for the rest, and we're super excited for NBA. NBA is actually the number one daily fantasy sport out there, and for just straight volume of bets, we all know NFL is the biggest fantasy sport, the biggest sport overall, but NBA is a massively popular sport because it has big name players on a daily basis, and you know, it's something you can watch. I mean, every time the guy scores 2 points, you get 2 points in your fantasy score, so it's pretty easy to follow. That's
awesome. So Joe Benevith with us here from, of course, when we're talking about this quick picks. Give us the spiel one more time before we get you out of here. What people can expect when they sign up and deposit for the first time.
Yep, we match 100% deposit on up to $100. So if you deposit $100, you'll get $100 instantly added to your account. You're allowed to enter any bet up to $100. A minimum of 3 picks up to 10, where 10 picks pays out $501. Like you said in your promo, we pay out up to $50,000. We actually had a user hit a $5 PGA 10 for 10 and returned him $2,500 just a couple of weeks ago.
Wow. That's nuts. QuickPicks.com/VSiN bonus to find out more information. Joe, we're up against it, but thank you for a couple minutes today, man.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me.
Yep, you got it. Again, no promo code needed. Just go to QuickPicks.com/VSiN bonus. Sign up for it today. Point Spread Weekly rolls on the other side. All right, welcome back in. Point Spread Weekly here on VSiN, the sports betting network. A reminder, I will always remind you, vsin.com/subscribe. Check that out. And a extra reminder that if you sign up for the free email, you'll get our hockey betting guide for free as well. So check that out at vsin.com/free. Let's head out and welcome in Will Hill, Point Spread Weekly contributor, a man of many, many, many hats at Not The Will Hill up on Twitter. Let's talk a little bit. This is my wheelhouse, man. I love every single sport, obviously, but NBA is my thing, and I'm excited to talk about this. So Will's with us, talk a little bit about some of the seeding games, specifically some of the win totals. So Will, we got to watch two of the games and two of the teams that you wrote about. So let's talk a little bit about Lakers and Clippers, your thoughts on those, what you thought on Thursday, but just tell us the under for both of those teams, what you were looking at in terms of their seeding game win totals and why.
Yeah, really just looking at motivation. I think there's not a whole lot of incentive, especially last night after the Lakers win the game. Their magic number for the 1 seed is down to 1. So these next 2 weeks, I think they're just going to be an extended training camp. I don't see them. I think they'll treat it sort of like an NFL team treats a preseason. They'll have a couple games where they play hard and ramp it up. They'll have another game where they play a little bit and then they'll shut it down. I would think. I don't see them going all out every game of these next 7 and really making a point to go 6-2 or 7-1. Even though they played hard all year. They won a back-to-back at Utah, at Denver, which nobody does if you follow the NBA. I mean, that's a brutal back-to-back. But they played hard all year. I just don't see the incentive to keep that going. On the other hand, the Clippers, I mean, they really, let's face it, they picked and choose when they played hard all year. They pick and choose when they play at all. And with no home court on the line, I don't see them coming here and really putting their foot on the gas, going 6-2, 7-1, something like that. So I'm really looking at the motivation here. I think these teams, they'll use it as a tune-up. They'll have nights where they play hard, but I just don't see the incentive for them to really, run the table or go 7-1, something like that.
I would really agree with that. I also I had the same thought process with the Bucks, especially because their win total got bet up to 6.5. Like, you're asking a team locked into the 1 seed, of course, to go 7-1 if you're betting over 6.5, and they really don't need to. So I would really agree. The motivation thing is big, and you're going to see that a lot. You saw that a lot in terms of the analysis and some of the seeding win totals for teams near the top. All right, let's talk about a couple more teams that I know that you had on your mind. Give me your spiel on the Sacramento Kings, because I know where I stand on them, and I think that people don't realize how live they are to win the 8th seed in the Western Conference. But where do you stand on Sacramento?
Yeah, I'm with you. I was actually looking for a number to win the 8th seed. Not all books are offering that, so I don't know what price you can get on that. I know Portland's 5-1, and that's sort of everyone's darling is Portland, because they're getting Nurkic back, they're getting Collins back. It's kind of a brand new team. It's a team that went to the Western Conference Finals last year. But my sleeper's the Kings. I just think the schedule's favorable. They got a game with the Spurs. They got the Magic. They got 2 with the Pelicans, so they can kind of control their own destiny with them and pull in front of them. And I just think they got one of the premier players in Fox. I like their schedule, so I think they are, like you said, they are live. Do you have a price on them to make the playoffs to get that 8 seed?
12-1 is the number that was available on Sacramento.
Nice,
yeah, so
that's not a bad number.
And to your point,
Magic, Spurs, Nets, I think. So that's a doable schedule.
Yep, 100%. Spurs, Magic, Mavericks is in there. Then you get the Pelicans, like you mentioned twice, the Nets. And here's the other thing that people.
And I think the Lakers, the last game. I think they get the Lakers the last game, and that might be a game the Lakers sit out a lot of guys.
Absolutely correct, and that's what I was going to go with, right? The Lakers, a lot of these teams, when people are evaluating these schedules in the bubble, I heard a lot about win percentage and hardest and easiest schedules. Like, you have to take that all with a grain of salt, because if you're a team like the Kings who get a Lakers at the end of your schedule, the Lakers aren't going to care. It's the last seeding game. You're going to get a lot of Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith. You just want to get out of that game and get healthy. So I think a team like the Kings is going to be very live. What about the Trailblazers? You kind of alluded to them. They are like the sexy pick now that they're a little healthy, but relying on a guy who broke his leg in gruesome fashion and hasn't played for over a year.
Yeah, I worry about the cohesiveness. And look, when you're everybody's sleeper, you're no longer a sleeper. That's kind of where I stand with them. I don't see the value on them. I know a lot of people are picking them to not only get the 8th seed. I think it was Barkley who said they're not only going to get the 8th seed, but they're going to beat the Lakers. So, okay, sure. I mean, I'm a little skeptical of that. I could see them being pesky. If they're at full strength, they are good, but that's a brutal schedule. I mean, today, I think at 4:00, this is probably the biggest game of the bubble with them and the Grizzlies, especially after the Pelicans losing. This is a huge game today, but after that, I mean, if they don't win today, Sixers, Clippers, Rockets, Mavs, Nuggets, Celtics, I mean, that's a rough stretch. When you got to make up ground, that's a rough stretch. So I'm not as high on the Blazers as everybody else. And
the difference, of course, between the schedules that we were referring to is a lot of those teams on the on the Trailblazer schedule have motivation to try to win every single one of their games for the most part, outside of teams like, we'll say the Clippers, like you mentioned, and the Nuggets if they're going to be locked in, but they can still fight for the 2nd seed in the Western Conference. All right, so I know that you wrote up for Point Spread Weekly as part of your piece this week. You did have a selection on the game on Thursday night, Pelicans and Jazz. We'll talk about the two teams and what you thought. One, give me the spiel on what you thought about the game in general and what your thoughts were going into the game, like on those two teams and what you expected them out of these seeding games.
Well, I didn't think they'd sit Zion the last 7 minutes. I mean, the tie game, a minute left, he's nowhere to be found. I haven't really heard the explanation. I'm sure it was minutes related. I'm sure he said my hands were tied due to the doctors and we're on a minutes restriction. Probably could have allocated the minutes and organized yourself a little better, so you had him good to go with a couple minutes to go. And really, that was the difference. I mean, Conley misses a shot with 19 seconds left. If you get a rebound there, you can hold for the last shot. It was a coin flip game. I just thought the Pelicans had more motivation. I'm down on the Jazz. I think Bogdanovich is a huge loss for a couple reasons. I think he gives them some juice, some punch on the offense. I remember when they added him last July, which seems about 8 years ago now. I remember thinking they're probably the best value, just bang for your buck on the board to win it all, because adding Conley and Bogdanovich was really the juice that team needed. So now they're down Bogdanovich, but they're down Bogdanovich because he has elective surgery, and I just wonder what kind of message that sends to the team. You're in this bubble. Are we really going to win it? One of our best players opted out, so I wonder. I have that concern with the Jazz, and I just thought these were two different teams going in different directions, and then the Pelicans are up 16. I look like a genius. And then, the 3 rims out by Ingram and I'm an idiot. So that's the way it goes sometimes.
Last team to talk about here. We got 90X. We got 60 seconds. Give me the spiel on the Oklahoma City Thunder, my true dark horse.
Oh, this has been my little pet team all summer. I got them 150-1 to win the division. I believe they're 33-14 since they started 6-11. I mean, they've really been incredible. I think second or third best record in the league since Thanksgiving. They've just overachieved. Paul has gotten a second life here, and they, like you said, they've just been. They're a real dark horse. They play well together. They've got depth. SGA is a good player. Gallinari, I think they are a dark horse. If everything went wild, I could see them, pulling off an upset or two, because they are a good team and they're a deep team and really a great story.
Yeah, I've been on record. They're going to be playing in the Western Conference semifinals. They're going to win a first-round series, and they're probably going to get eliminated in the second round. But that three-guard lineup, man, I've gone over the numbers before, but for those who are watching right now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chris Paul, and, of course, Dennis Schroeder on the floor together, plus 31.4 per 100 possessions. It's a nutty lineup with those three guards. Will, appreciate the time as always, and great work as always in Point Spread Weekly, man. Thank you.
All right, JVT, be good, man. Thank you.
You got it. And not the Will Hill, of course, up on Twitter, and all the work in Point Spread Weekly. Did I tell you? VSiN.com/free. You get this hockey guide, and you should check out Point Spread Weekly. On the other side, a little mixed martial arts. I'm going to throw hockey at him as well, because Lou Finocchiaro is the man, and he joins us next. All right, last couple of minutes, but they're the best minutes here on the Point Spread Weekly. Why? Because Lou Finocchiaro is with us today. We always talk with Lou as mixed martial arts really has taken center stage, specifically the UFC. They have done a great job with this hiatus of sports, of grabbing the focus of the sporting world and really not letting it go, Lou. They have done a great job, and they've done a great job because they keep putting quality cards together time and time again. So we got a good one on deck this weekend. But before we get to the UFC, I wanted to ask you, because I know you're also a hockey guy, for those people who are out there who are watching, hockey's getting started this weekend. I assume you're involved in a few series in hockey this weekend?
Actually, I'm not. My tactic is, Jonathan, I want to play for advantage, not for the action. And I don't know how to get advantage if I'm looking at 4-month-old analytics. Each team's chemistry is different because they're all healthy, and I'm not going to guess. And so I'm going to watch 9 days of 5 games of hockey a day. And after 9 days of doing that, I'm going to have some advantage. That's
actually that's a very good point, and something I had not thought of, because you and I think was it on DM or did we talk on here? We had Travis Yost on last week. We talked about learning about analytics. We've been using it more on the show to get involved, but the point of being, obviously aged analytics and these teams not being in action, like I've latched onto these numbers a lot, and I've made a couple of bets looking at some of the advantages that I view are statistical advantages. But I hadn't thought about that in terms of these being kind of aged and these teams not really, I shouldn't say living up to the analytical profiles that they have, but not being in action to where maybe they don't match up with their game at this point early on. Having said that, let me ask you, I've made 2 series bets up to this point. Winnipeg plus 105, Phoenix plus 115. How much money am I losing?
Well, I don't know, because, and excuse me for saying it like this, you could guess better than me.
Yeah.
To me, I really do think that we are, if we're going to assume that data 4 months old is legit, then we can make any assessment that we want. I have the data, and I have the data that I track. And I will say this, a lot of people get caught up in offense. And I think that's a great way to track in any way, shape, or form the regular season. But if you're handicapping playoff hockey, you better be handicapping all the defensive metrics, because that's what the second season is all about. And I'll use my numbers from the regular season, buffer them with 9 days. And as you and I have discussed before, Jonathan, you got to watch the games.
Yep.
So I'll know a lot more in 9 days. I really will. That said, I do have futures on the Blues for the Campbell and the Blues for the Cup. I think that's a fine, solid team that is veteran-laden. coached with continuity, and has solid goaltending. And I honestly, and again, I reserve the right to be totally wrong in 9 days, change all my opinions, but it's my opinion that 5 of the 8 teams that are playing in the round robin are the only cup winners. No one's going to win the cup from down below. Yeah. That's my opinion right now.
Yeah, and by the way, too, to your point, the reason why I bet on Phoenix was those defensive metrics. Those defensive metrics for the Coyotes looked very good. They look very good on paper, and they're a team that's kind of built from the goaltender out.
Yes, Kemper is going to be there. He's going to be solid. I love the coaching. I love where you're going with that. The only thing that I would temper that with is Rene, who normally would be punchy and tired at this time of the year, could fire a little more fresh. As far as Winnipeg is concerned, if you had a gun to my head, that might be a long shot team out of the West that you could consider.
I would never put a gun to your head. All right, let's talk a little bit about the UFC and the card that's going to go on this weekend. Lou has been doing a great job with the coverage in Point Spread Weekly. So give us the spiel here on the main event. Edmund's last name I've always had a little trouble with, but Derek Brunson's not that bad. Brunson, though, plus 260 in the middleweight main event. What are you looking at here?
Edmund Shahbazian, a 22-year-old phenom, tailing on Ronda Rousey's reputation, but he's building his own, and it's worthy. And he fights out of her gym. He is very explosive, young, unusually large for the division, but his body of work, he can only fight what the 4 people they've put in front of him, but they're aged shells of top 10, top 15 middleweight competition, whereas Brunson, who's 14 years older at 36, will hold a vast experience edge here. In fact, his only of 2 of his 4 losses have been to Adesanya and Whitaker, and after they beat him, they went on to win the title. And Shahbazian is very vocal about wanting to be the youngest champion in the UFC ever. So he's looking at Brunson as a stepping stone. And Brunson is keenly aware that's how he's looking at him. And when I can find an underdog that I feel is entering a fight fully focused and prepared to bring their absolute best, then I'm willing to invest. And Brunson's a person I'm willing to invest on based on his experience, the caliber of fighter he's been in there with, and the fact that he's got a little chip with this young man.
And you note in the piece, when it comes to Brunson, the nearly 3 takedowns every 15 minutes, his wrestling that could work to his advantage a little in this matchup, correct?
The wrestling edge, and thank you, is really, I think, the ace that he has here. He surely doesn't want to stand with this explosive young man who kicks and swings and is strong and violent. I think if Brunson can manage to work this fight to the floor and get on top, we can have a very interesting fight. And for that matter, I also lean to this fight going over the 1.5 rounds based on the wrestling acumen of Brunson and his ability to smother Shahbazian's strikes and take this fight into deep waters where Shahbazian has rarely been.
All right, let's take a look at the welterweight card on this fight. The Zente Luque taking on Randy Brown. Luque right now about $1.85, Brown plus 165. And Luque has been on a very good run. And as you know, the lone loss out of his last 7 bouts to, I would say, a very good fighter in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So give us a breakdown here.
The way to fight Luque is to use length, distance, movement, because his feet are not great. The way not to fight Luque is to stand there like Barberina or so many others did and try and go punch for him. Luque lands 5.7 strikes a minute, but he accepts 5.8 strikes a minute. And there's where Randy Brown, who's going to be 4 or 5 inches taller with a 3-inch reach advantage arms, 7-inch reach advantage legs, is going to take a page out of the Stevie Wonderboy Thompson fight plan. And while he's on his feet, stay at distance and use his boxing and striking to keep the raging bull, Luque, who's going to try and get inside the pocket to level his damage. That's going to be the cat and mouse. Can Luque get in, and can Brown keep him on the outside? I do believe, many people believe that there's an advantage Luque on the ground. I'm not of that opinion. I think that Brown's wrestling is vastly underrated. I actually think he may choose to take this to the ground to get top position on Luque, and we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I do like Randy Brown as an underdog in this fight.
You kind of alluded to something there, and part of the handicapping process that I've been going through when it comes to mixed martial arts that I want to ask you here. Significant strike differential. How important is that, and does it vary from fighter to fighter? Because obviously there are some fighters, Lou, who like to stand up, and I would think significant strike differential is more important than fighters who like to go to the ground, wrestle, get muddy, and try to submit you.
Boy, it's how the recipe of those two fighters interlace.
Yeah.
It's surely in a striking battle. What we know from those numbers, I don't look offense to offense. I look at offense to defense. So while Randy Brown only realizes 3.5 strikes a minute, that's going to be accentuated by the lack of Luque defense. Meanwhile, Brown, being long, tall, angular, only allows 2.4. That may also negate some of Luque's abilities. Provided Brown stays on the outside, moves, and makes Luque rush in. If Brown decides to toe-to-toe it here, he's going to play the wrong game against a very, very dangerous man.
All right, last one, bantamweight bout. Jonathan Martinez, Frankie Saenz, 210 plus 180. We're looking at this one. Give us the last breakdown here. We got about 2 minutes left.
Yes, Jonathan Martinez stepped on the scale 4 pounds overweight this morning. I'm certain he did it on purpose. This is a huge fight for him. And again, like some of these others, he doesn't have the body of work that his opponent has, but he's a little taller and longer. He's 26 and the opponent's 40 years old. However, that 40-year-old opponent has very sturdy wrestling. He's a grinder, and he's coming off a loss in his last fight that he feels embarrassed by. Again, I believe Frankie Saenz shows up to this fight wanting to prove something. He trains out of Fight Ready, and he coaches out of Fight Ready in Phoenix. He's Henry Cejudo's primary sparring partner. Frankie Saenz is a solid fighter and a grinder, and I really like him a lot in this position, despite the fact the other kid is gaining weight and has 4 pounds over advantage because he knows he's going to try to get taken down. He's going to try and combat that. But Frankie Saenz, Randy Brown, and Derek Brunson, 3 live dogs, and let's hope they can hit for us.
Lou, mixed martial arts, golf, basketball, hockey, baseball, it's all back this weekend, man. So you enjoyed the weekend, and thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good luck, everyone.
Yep, you got it. And I'll repeat that, man. All these sports, they're coming back. This is a good thing. It's going to be a very good Saturday, absolutely loaded with action. And what you need is some help handicapping that action. That's what Point Spread Weekly is all about. So make sure you check that out. Go to VSiN.com. Sign up for this bad boy. A lot of NBA content as the bubble, of course, is underway over in Orlando. But you get 24/7 video stream and replays of VSiN programming with VSiN Plus subs, afternoon emails, show highlights, special betting guides like our hockey one. By the way, that one's free. So go to VSiN.com/free. Check that one out. And access to exclusive stories, proprietary handicapping data up on VSiN.com. If you're not a VSiN Plus sub subscriber, now is the time to do it, considering that everything is back. We're returning to a small sense of normalcy in the sports world and in the sports betting community, and this is the time, and you need all of the information possible. So with that, make sure you check it out, because we barely scratched the surface, even with the guests that we had today on their articles. VSiN.com/subscribe. We will see you next week here on Point Spread Weekly.